And we're live.
Hi.
Okay, it's a miracle, I think, that everything happened to get this in order at this time, right? Yeah, I was
Yep.
going to say, I don't know if it's just my view, but you're like kind of chopped off, as am I think. I don't know. Let me
I mean,
see.
that's when we do a joint live. It
Yeah,
cut. Yeah.
exactly. Okay, so amazing. I have to say that this live topic has generated a lot. When I first posted Ricky's story last week, I got over 100 messages from people in pain because this was something that was hitting home very, very hard for a lot of people. And as we saw in some of the questions that I emailed you, we're really getting questions from all different angles. And I think what the beauty of this live, what I hope at least for it to be, is for us to be able to explore the different perspectives, and that
Yeah.
sometimes what might be right for one person doesn't really work perfectly for another, but it's what we're going to explore, I think, together.
Okay.
So do you want me to raise some of the questions? Do you want to first start with an intro? What do you want to do?
I guess we could just jump into it and start addressing.
Okay. So I think just to give a couple of people just the basic overview, because I just saw somebody just message me just saying, like, what exactly, where are we going with this? I think what we want to talk about is how to be able to support family members, particularly children and teens, because I think there is a difference, and I think we'll go into that a little bit, versus adults who, in my particular case, in the story that we raised, is a child who's lost a parent while still maintaining healthy boundaries in your own home and being able to have a life. Because a lot of what we saw was like it was either or, either we were getting completely burnt out, or we were doing everything for everyone, and the other way, not doing anything at all. So the first question that came in, and these were all loaded questions, some of which, some of you who have sent in the questions will see that I combined two of them together because they were just repetitious. So the first question was, my sister passed away, left 5 kids. Her husband does not want my involvement more than the occasional Shabbos invites, but the kids need tons of help as far as the aunt is concerned. She said, I see it when I meet them. Can I help them without his knowledge? And if not, what and how can I reach out to them so that they know I'm not staying away? He's kind of making me do this.
Okay. So that's a great question. And I guess there's a few things that we need to kind of like think about first. Sometimes and this goes like, even if there's not a parent who passed away, sometimes we pass a lot of judgment on our family members' way of raising their kids and how their families function, that we think, that's not how I would do it, or that's not good for them, or that's not, what I think is appropriate or correct or healthy. And at the end of the day, I think this might be hard for some people to hear, like, that's not your immediate family, so that's not really your place or your business. So if he is doing things with the kids, after your sister passes away, that you feel like it's, he's not dealing with them properly or whatever it is, like, that's for him to decide. That's his family. Those are his kids. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. And I have a feeling that if you try to interject and tell him, give him your opinion, you'll only end up cutting yourself off more, which will hurt the kids even more. And that's not being supportive anyway, telling him what the things he's doing wrong or what you would do differently. Again, it's not your family, it's not your kids. He has different values, he has different priorities. He might be mourning himself, and so this is how he's dealing. So I would say, instead of trying to interject what you think he should be doing, instead just focus on being supportive. And if you want to be there for the kids and he doesn't want you to be, it might be that maybe you're being too pushy and he feels like when you come around, you're telling him how to parent, it's stressing him out, it makes him feel bad about himself. Maybe he knows what your sister would have wanted better than you know. So it's just kind of like, we have to kind of take that perspective that even though we think we know what's best for, our family, sometimes we don't. And I would say, unless the kids are really in danger or in distress, or when you see them, they're like, no, don't leave, and don't leave us with daddy. Like, you should just let them be. send them gifts on Hanukkah, send them birthday cards, call them once in a while, ask your brother-in-law, hey, we're all going out to dinner Sunday night. Do you guys want to come, or do you want me to just pick up the kids? Can I bring them for a play date? That kind of stuff. But also respect that if he says no, that maybe it's not helpful to him, right? Part of being helpful is like knowing when someone says no, respect that and honor it. We don't want to stress them out by like forcing ourselves on them. So if he feels like, we're just going to have a night in and the kids just want to lay low and I'm cool with that, like, then you have to honor that. Even if you think, well, I think the kids really need to get out more, but maybe he doesn't feel that way. And he's the parent, so he really gets to decide that. And that's very hard. It's hard when you see, and again, it's hard when we see our siblings, or if you see your child raising their kids in a way that you're like, oh my gosh, like this is not what I taught you. But we have to just let them be. That's their family and that's their decision how to raise them.
I think that you touched on a very important point, is that definitely sometimes we have our own way of dealing with things and we tend to project that on others, and that kind of comes out there. Somebody did raise something, which actually somebody else had texted me also, is that one day the kids will grow up and ask where everyone was. And I guess she's indicating to a situation where, and we certainly have seen this, right? Where kids say like, where was everybody when I was growing up? Not noticing that I was in agony.
So what I'm saying is you're not disappearing. You're very much there, but you're not stepping on anyone's toes. So the question that she had asked was she thinks he's not doing things the right way and he's not handling it. So my response is that's not your place to judge. That's his family.
I think in answer to her first question, can I help them without his knowledge? I think we would both agree is a bad idea. It's just it's a bad message on all fronts. Frankly, an adult who does something behind a parent's back loses my trust, even the most well-intentioned thing.
It undermines their father, and it creates a disrespect and a disconnect from their dad, and that's not helpful to them. And again, like their connection to him is important, and you can still be very much involved in their lives while respecting his boundaries, the living parent's boundaries. That matters too. It's not just what we think is best for the kids. It's also honoring what their living parent thinks is best for the kids. And again, that's their family. It's not our job to step in and become the new mother, So you can be there, and there are lots of ways that you can continue to be there, but without stepping on toes and ruining the relationship with, in this case, her brother-in-law.
Right. I think we'll move on to the next one, although I want to go back to one thing here soon. The next question was, my father-in-law passed away when I was in Shana Rishona. My mother-in-law seems to need us for Kiddush, Havdalah, the Seder, everything that has a man, like a male figure. She kind of always says, I need this couple. Is it selfish of me that 3 years later I feel like the family should know how to function without us, and I'm just always having to be there as a couple for everything that's male-oriented?
Right. So I totally hear this question. I do not think it's selfish. I think it's valid. And what we want for our families is, when they go through something, you want to help them get back on their feet, right? You don't want them to be dependent on you. You want to make sure that things are set up for them so that they can continue, with their life. But we also do want to make sure that we make space for them to, come for a Seder. I would say like Pesach is like a different thing, but definitely like every Shabbos, every Havdalah, I could see how that could be after 3 years, like, okay, like we got to get something happening here. So I would say in this case, like, I would kind of want to help her mother-in-law set up some kind of like other relationships with like a neighbor or, someone who lives close to her that she could go over to and spend a Shabbos with or have a Friday night with, so that it's not always falling on you. Because that's good for her anyway, to be social and to have other people outside of her family that she can connect to. So I would want to encourage her to think about maybe like spending Shabbos with someone else, and that's not selfish. I think that's good for her, and that's good for you, the kids, so that you don't feel resentful of her, and that when she's sitting at your Shabbos table, you're not like, she's like, can you pass the challah? And you're like, no,
Right.
Want to enjoy her presence there. And you want it to come from like a full heart of like really wanting her there. So I would say that.
I think initially, sometimes when we do something like that, people will give the pushback because they're used to it. If it's been 3 years this way, I think probably she can expect that her mother-in-law is like, why? What happened? Did I do something wrong? That kind of feeling.
And it will be hard for her, and it will be scary, and she probably won't want to do it, especially because for 3 years she's had this safety net of like, I'm comfortable with my kids. Like, why should I go anywhere else? And that's why when you give this message, it shouldn't be about like, it's annoying, mom. Like, we don't want you every week. It should be more like, this is good for you. It's good for you to branch out and have friends and have a social network. It's so fulfilling for you to like have a life beyond your family. It'll give you a whole new sense of like community and meaning. And mom, this is about you. It's not about us. You know, it's a little bit about you too, but you don't want to feel like it's like you're annoying us and we don't want you around. Not at all. Yes, we're getting annoyed. You don't need to tell her that, but this is really about, it's not good for you to be so dependent on us. We want you to have more in your life. And this would be something that might be scary for you and hard, and we get it and we're going to support you, but we would love to help you find other people to connect with, because I feel like that would make your life so much more fulfilling and maybe even fill a little bit of that hole that's left of not having, you know, dad around or whatever it is. Like putting new love and connection in that place. It's never going to replace dad or Abba or Tati or whoever, but it will give you a new sense of meaning and belonging. And I think that if it comes from a place of love and caring and compassion, that message is received a lot better than like, Ma, if you come to our house one more Shabbos, like I'm going to scream, you know? We want to show that it's coming from a place of love.
And that will probably make it much more effective and much more long-term, because the parent might be a little bit more willing to get into that. I think
it's easier to do that way when the message is given that way.
There is going to also be, I just want to say, is that there will be sometimes the parent who will say, I'm fine with this. I don't need any more relationships. I don't need anything. And that's where, you know, you may sometimes need an outside party to help you navigate this. If the parent is not accepting it and cannot accept the boundaries, you know, to kind of navigate it, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a Rav that's involved in the situation, that can help you kind of walk that tightrope so that the mom can figure it out. Because, yeah, sometimes after 3 years, they get used to a certain reality. Anybody can get used to any reality, and it's like really hard to change. I think that's that answer
to remember
was asking about how to word it. I think that probably we answered that in the second part. Okay. As a kid of a mother, and this is more of a commentary than a question, but I think it deserves its own, you know, kind of piece. As a kid of a mother who gave herself over to my cousins and forgot about her own kids, I don't think those kids, meaning I guess the Rickies of this world who lost a parent, get it. It's true that they had a horrible loss, but honestly, do they really expect everyone's life to be turned upside down whenever they need something? I don't know what the answer is, but thinking that every aunt has nothing to do other than to go to a play of a niece, which was the original example where, you know, just for the people who hadn't seen the highlight, it's about, she said she reached out to her aunts to ask them to join her at a Hanukkah play. It did seem like she did it somewhat last minute, which could be the school let her know last minute. That could happen. And everyone seemed to be unavailable. So she's saying to expect everyone's life to be turned over just for a play. She says, I don't know what the answer is, but that is unrealistic. I know I sound harsh, but I think I'm speaking for a lot of adults who had childhoods that were overtaken by needy relatives who their parents, I guess, ran to rescue to some degree.
Right. All right. So with that, I would say a couple things. Like number one is, I guess you have to remember when you're dealing with kids, like they tend to be egocentric. They tend to not be so mature and thought out and planning. I mean, even adults, like I know I tend to be a little bit last minute and forget about things and be like, oh, shoot, like, Ma, can you come to, this one's play? I forgot. And she's like, are you serious? Like, I booked a trip. Like, why didn't you tell me months ago? You knew about it. It was on the school calendar. So I definitely have been forgetful and irresponsible in that way. All the more so for a kid who's overwhelmed. They lost a parent. They don't really know what's up with their lives. They're not used to maybe being on top of these things and coordinating invites and whatever. So yes, it's a little bit unrealistic, but it's kind of understandable, like maybe why she wasn't so on top of it. And maybe like you said, she didn't know she's allowed to invite extended family, or she didn't know until last minute, like who knows what was with the school. So I would say in that situation, if you really can't make it, you could just empathize, I would say, with the child. This is something I really want to emphasize a lot. Empathy does a world of wonders. Even when you disappoint someone and let them down and they feel mad and hurt, if you could just validate those feelings and be like, you know what, I get it. I couldn't come and you're disappointed. And I totally understand that, That doesn't mean that you should have gone or that you should have thrown away your plans and not gone to your own kid's Chumash play, or It just means that you're acknowledging that they feel hurt and they feel a little bit maybe forgotten or left behind. And that in itself is very powerful. And I know some people are like, well, what if they say, well, it doesn't matter and I'm still mad at you? Those words are very, very powerful. And they'll remember that you cared enough to even reach out and say, I know you're so disappointed I couldn't make it and I feel so bad. And you know, control yourself from saying, well, you did let me know a little last minute. It doesn't matter. Like, it is what it is. Like, I know you wanted me to be there and I'm so sorry you were let down. And next time, hopefully I can, you know, get a little bit, you know, more prepared and I can maybe even find out from your school when these things are, and I'm going to try to be there if it works for me, right? And you have to put that in there, if it works for me. I can't guarantee that I can be at everything, but if I can be, I want to be. And that's a message you convey also. I want to be there. I want to support you, but sometimes life doesn't allow me to do that. But it doesn't mean I'm not thinking about you and that you're not important to me. And, you know, so I'm so sorry I missed it. Let me make it up to you some other way. And it could be something small. You bring them a hot chocolate or something one Sunday morning, or you send them something or whatever it is. But you let them know that their feelings matter to you. Their hurt feelings matter, and that your intention is not to be callous and cold and like, well, my life comes first.
Right.
I get it.
I think I want to stop it for a second because I think that's the nuanced piece. I think when we were originally getting, and again, we only had her perspective, but in Ricky's story, I think what was probably the most hurtful was that she just felt like this very confused feeling, like nobody wants to show up and nobody seems to want to pick up slack of my life. Well, guess what? I'm 15. I don't know what to do next, right? And I think offering the yes, but, like, I or the no, but, like, I can't do this, but I can do that. I think that balance, when we get it right, then the boundaries are much more palatable to people, because sometimes the boundaries feel like a shut door when it's done in a cold and, you know, distant kind of way versus like, I really want to be there for you, like you're saying, but just this particular time or this particular thing doesn't work, but I can do X, Y, Z. I think that's really, you know, important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a reality to what, you know, as harsh as maybe the way this person phrased it right now, and she did phrase it a little harshly, to be fair, but I think part of what she is saying is there is a fallout to families where moms become rescuers. There's a huge fallout there, and we know it, and we see it in different ways. It's not good usually because they end up with burnout really fast, but also because they are hurting their families. And I know sometimes it's really hard to hear, like, for a kid in pain, look, I lost my mother when I was 9. Would I ever appreciated at that age hearing like, oh, you know, my family comes first? I probably wouldn't have appreciated that way. And I think it can't be phrased that way to a child, because that's where the hurtful piece was also. It was like, well, I'm so sorry I had plans with my kids. Like, I don't know if I would emphasize exactly what's missing in that person's life as like, yeah, Ma, we had plans to go out as a couple when the mom is alone, right? I don't know if that, I think that sensitivity maybe can play a piece here. But certainly like the piece of, you know, kind of respecting the fact that people do have lives is a healthy piece for the suffering person as well, which will help them, you know, which would help them that way.
So just like pick apart a little bit the wording of the question, it's worded in a very like defensive way, you know, which makes me think that this person has a lot of guilt around, you know, their presence or not presence and around the kids' feelings towards them. And that's something I would say, like, you should look at that. Like, clearly you feel upset and you feel like you're not doing something that you're supposed to do. So then I would even look at that, like, why do they expect me to be there all the time? And what do they think I'm just going to drop everything? Do you feel like maybe you should be doing that? And that's why it sounds like you're projecting those expectations on to a kid. And it might have been as simple as like, no, I really just wanted you at my play, you know, and I would like to get together once in a while. So I would say maybe even look at what are the expectations you're having of yourself? Do you feel like you're not doing enough, or that you should be doing more, or that more is expected of you, but no one's actually really said that to you? Do you feel guilt that you cannot do more, or that you don't want to do more? Look at that. Ask yourself that. Be honest with yourself. Maybe nobody ever said that even, and maybe that's not expected. So I would say like there's a little tone of defensiveness there, and it sounds a little bit like projecting. I would take like a minute to kind of introspect and think about that. Where is this coming from that I feel like that's what this 15-year-old or 14-year-old or 10-year-old is expecting of me? Is that really what's happening? I don't know. You know?
Right. And I think that's an excellent point. And I think also somebody just texted me on the other on my computer. I keep checking that screen also, which was that sometimes if a person can prepare ahead of time, where the child has clear expectations of what everyone's role in their lives are, it creates safety. And she was saying is that really as a child, she would have appreciated knowing that this aunt is available only on the weekends and whatever, you know, kind of, but there's a certain consistency to that. I think that's also a really, really good point, is that when we set up to people just this is what we can do, then they will take us up on that, and not leaving it open-ended is definitely helpful. Another question was, I feel like my uncles, and this is clearly coming from a teen, not clearly, I happen to know it's coming from a teen, who lost her father, and she feels like her uncles, meaning say her father's brothers, should be more forthcoming in offering invitations. We always have to be calling to ask, can we come? Maybe we can sensitize families to anticipating needs as part of the boundary setting. So I think that sort of touches on what we said before.
Yeah. I mean, I think that even it picks up a little bit on what you were just saying about like maybe family kind of like setting a schedule of like what they're available to do. So if the uncles could say like once a month, you know, Uncle Shmuel is going to have you guys for Shabbos, and like he's going to call you, and then, you know, Shabbos Hanukkah, you go to Uncle Yosef, and like then the kids kind of know what to expect, and then they're not like, well, you know, it's like the second Shabbos in January, nobody's calling us. Like if they know that there's times that like they go to their family, I think that's something that I wish maybe that would be something even that we would do, like, you know, when someone passes away, that, you know, sometimes High Lifeline comes in and they have this grief counselor or whatever. Like I wish that they would even do that with family members. Say like, you know what, there's kids here. Like, let's talk about ways that you guys can be supportive that helps preserve your sanity and, you know, honors your need to be with your family and to have your own space, but also make sure that the kids are like not forgotten, because it's not realistic for them to go every Shabbos to a family member and to always have someone around. It's also just not life. Like they need to learn to get back into the world and start kind of like defining their family, their new family without that parent, and, you know, finding a space in their lives that's comfortable, not depending so much on other family members to, you know, fill a parent's void. So I think that that point that you brought up about like kind of like making expectations clear about this is what we can do and this is when we would love to have you, that would be great. So I would say maybe even this teenager, if she has enough courage, maybe she could reach out to her uncles and say, like, we love coming for Shabbos and we love spending time with you. Could we kind of make a schedule so that we don't feel like we have to like bug you, or that we don't feel like we're annoying, you know, when we want to spend time with you. And I'm hoping and assuming that these uncles would be compassionate and be like, oh my gosh, yes, we do want you. And like, we didn't think about that. And what a great idea. Let's do once a month, you go to a different uncle, or, you know, every 6 weeks or whatever, or this uncle will do the holidays and this one will do, you know, a once a month Shabbos, and the other few weeks you guys are together, just your family without us. Something like that, where there is like, then even the family members who are helping, those caregiver family members, also know what to expect. It's not like, you know, Wednesday, oh shoot, Shmuley's calling, they want to come for Shabbos again. Like, you'll know it's coming up, you know, so it doesn't mess with your schedule. And you know, to arrange around having your nieces and nephews and your sister-in-law or brother-in-law or whatever it is for Shabbos, then it just makes, this helps preserve the relationship. It helps prevent resentment. It's a boundary, and it's so important to have. So I think that's a really important point that you brought up. And
I think it's brilliant, because the truth is that I think when we were going back to what you were saying about doing it in the beginning, is I think what happens also for some families is that in the beginning, everybody likes to overpromise, right? Especially if there's a traumatic and sudden death, right? Sometimes when there's an illness, so you have the progression. I find that when there's a sudden death, people come in and they're like, oh, I'm always going to be there for you. I'm going to come every Shabbos. I'm never going to leave you guys alone, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, oh my gosh, right. So probably if we can do some education right from the get-go of setting up some sort of boundary and schedule and thing, and that's probably kinder in the long run than anything else, because it also doesn't, going back to that example of the mother-in-law with the 3 years, right? If right away in the beginning it would have been, Ma, we love coming here. We can come Friday nights twice a month. I don't know, whatever, right? We can do Havdalah and Kiddush Friday nights twice a month, and we need 2 weeks a month home, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It would have also allowed for certain things to happen in that environment, versus now it's so much harder to pull back without hurting people. It really is. The reality.
And it might feel like another loss for them because they've become so dependent on you filling that void. So it really is a chesed to kind of create that boundary and give them a little bit of that.
I want to touch on that a little bit, because I got a little bit, I think there's a misunderstanding, and certainly people on your page should be aware of this a little bit more, but some of them, we got to educate them a little bit. There's a misconception that the word boundary is somewhat negative, like I'm pushing them out. And I see boundaries very much as bringing people closer into my life, and I can tolerate so many more people and welcome so many more people in because it's boundary, because it's working. And many of the questions that were coming in were like, well, you can't raise a normal family and have a job and everything and be there for your family, the extended family and stuff like that. And the truth is that you can, if we set it up in a way that works.
Right.
But I think this whole misconception a little bit, if you could take a couple minutes about the boundary piece being a negative versus, a positive thing.
Yes. So I think that people assume that boundaries mean like you stop talking to people and you cut them off and you tell people don't treat me that way and that's it. When in reality, all a boundary is you letting people know what works for you in a relationship. It gives you a voice. It lets you be heard. It gives you an opinion. It lets you say what you like or what you don't like. A boundary could be something as simple as hey, guys, let's go to this restaurant for lunch, and you can't stand that restaurant, and you're you decide that day to speak up. You know what? I don't love that place. We always go there. Could we try this place? That's like exercising a boundary of not doing things that you're uncomfortable with just to hang out with this person, It's learning to use your voice. So boundaries are not walls, and they're not cutting people off. I always say they're not walls, they're fences. They keep bad out and they let good in. And if there is a wall, that's not a boundary. You're just creating divide between you and whoever it is. A boundary makes you feel better about your relationships with people because there becomes room for your voice. There's a respect. You can be who you are. You're being more authentic because you can speak and it's safe. And hopefully when you set boundaries and people respect them, that it's a relationship that's good and that is valuable and that they care about you. So it's so important to have boundaries, because if we don't, then what happens is people walk all over us. Sometimes maybe we walk all over other people. They treat us badly. We're not honest about what we want. And then what ends up happening is we ruin relationships. So boundaries don't ruin relationships. They actually enhance them and make them better. Not having boundaries is what destroys a relationship, is what eventually has it come to a point where sometimes it's cut off. If we had boundaries, we would be able to preserve the dignity of relationships and make them so much better. And that's why I think it's so important that we really have to look at the state of our relationships and be honest with ourselves. Am I saying what I want? Am I being walked all over? Am I putting up with things that I don't want to put up with? Am I overextending myself because I'm scared to disappoint them, or I think it makes me a bad person, or I think it's disrespectful? You need to look at that. And we need to understand that boundaries are actually kind. And there's a great quote that I love, love, love from Brene Brown, where she said that when I started setting boundaries, I became far more loving, less sweet, but far more loving. Far more loving, but less sweet. There you go. She said, I became far more loving, but less sweet. So when we're being nice really just means that you're being shmata and you're not using your voice, right? But being loving means that you're coming from a place of genuineness and really being able to give. And so her whole thing is, yes, I was setting boundaries and I had to say no sometimes, but I was a far more loving person because when I was saying yes, it was coming from a place of genuineness and from really wanting to be there and giving my all, as opposed to saying yes and silently hating myself and hating this person and not giving my all. And then who knows what happens down the line with this relationship. So far more loving, but less sweet. And that's a good thing to be loving.
Line. It's a great line. You know, it's interesting. I have a neighbor of mine who, part of the reason that I'm always quick to ask her for a favor is because she's so quick to say no. So like I asked her today if something would work for her. I was staying at work late and she's like, no, it just doesn't work today. That's great. That gives me an opportunity to ask her again because I'm so comfortable with the fact that if she can't, no hard feelings, she says no, I move on, right? Versus sometimes in family when we just say, yeah, you can come again for Shabbos and you're silently cursing everyone under your breath, that's not helpful. And at some point people start to pick up and they're like, well, is she resentful? Does she really want me? Is she this? And you don't want to create that environment. So those boundaries are so welcoming, like you put it. Beautiful. Okay. Can you talk about how sometimes we need to kick out the help because they can't respect our boundaries? So that sort of loops to a little bit hints to what was going on in the first question, possibly. And I have to tell you that it's very interesting. Men who lose their wives, one of the first things many of the men will tell me, and they all use similar lingo, is I changed the locks. Now, sometimes it's figuratively and sometimes it's literally. But some people tell me, you know, people were so kind. All my wife's friends and sisters and everybody, you know, during this whole 7-year illness saga, everybody was here with meals all day long. And somehow I used to walk into my own house, like after a day of work. One guy told me, he says, and I didn't know where I came to, but it was somebody else's hotel that I was walking into. And he said there were like no hours and people would come at all times. He's like, Shiva was over. I'll tell you what, I changed the locks. He's like, I'm owning my house. I'm getting it back. And I think it may allude to that in the first question. And I think this is what this person's talking about. Can you talk about how sometimes we need to kick out the help because they can't respect the boundaries? I guess this is her message to her extended family. And she's saying, then they get insulted. We had that in our family. Okay, I knew she was talking from personal experience here.
Right. So this is something actually that I talk about a lot, a little bit in a different way, but it totally relates to this. And that's kind of like that whole notion of like, when someone's feeling bad and we try to like make them feel better by being like, oh, Hashem has a plan, or like, oh, it's all for the best, or you're going to grow from this. Like we try to like cover up their feelings with like our positivity. And I think in this case, like in a Shiva house where we're like being helpful, but like we're in their way and we're there constantly and we're not thinking about maybe they want to be alone. Maybe they want to go lie down. Maybe they just want a quiet dinner with the kids with nobody in the house, mopping around them, vacuuming around them, cleaning their counters. Maybe they just want, like when there's no Shiva visitors, maybe they just want quiet, you know? Then I think we kind of lose sight of what the purpose of our support is. If we get insulted when they're like, you know what, we'd really like some quiet, could everyone just like go? Our reaction shouldn't be like, oh, you don't appreciate my help. No, if that's how I can help you by going away, that's what I'm doing, you know? So I think that we have to a little bit put our egos aside. And again, our expectations of what is helpful. And we have to really remember that we want to honor what this family that we're trying to help thinks is helpful. So if they don't want you there 24/7 cleaning the house and making the food and coming every Shabbos and whatever, then we have to honor that. And I think that every family should feel safe to let you know, we appreciate everything you've done. Like this Shabbos, we just want to keep it low key and like have no visitors. And that might feel a little bit to you like a little like pinch in the heart, but like remind yourself, this isn't personal. This is what they need. I want to give them what they need. So yeah, I feel like I wish I could be there, but that's serving my need. That's not serving their need. I feel comforted hanging around them, but it's not about me being comforted. I'm not the one that's dealing with the loss, They're the one that's really dealing with the loss. Or maybe I'm dealing with it, but in a little bit more of a removed way. So if this is what they need, then I need to take that time that they're giving me, even see it as a gift. They're telling me, go take a break. You've been helping us so much. Take that time and engage in some self-care. Go call a friend, go out for dinner, go read a book, go watch a movie or whatever it is, and take some time for yourself instead of like feeling rejected or feeling like they think you're, feeling that they're ungrateful or whatever it is. Use that opportunity to recharge your batteries so that if they do want you back or need you back, you can be there and be full-hearted and ready to help again. But I think sometimes people like lose sight of why they're there to help. So when someone says, okay, we don't need your help right now, then again, that being helpful means not being helpful in that moment.
That's terrific. Somebody wrote here, what happens if a person doesn't obey your boundary? Like they still just pop into your house without notifying you beforehand. I even decided not to open the door and she stayed until I opened for another thing. Okay, you're going to have to answer this one, but to me, this sounds like certainly somebody who unfortunately is probably struggling with some sort of mental illness where they have a really irregular time in terms of respecting boundary. Because I think for normal people who don't have this sort of struggle, they may not like the boundary. You can get pushback. Probably physically showing up at your door in that form. I don't know. You tell me. It sounds like there's something more going on there.
Yeah, I would think that there's really some like emotional distress. Like if someone feels so compelled to like show up at your door when you say like, please don't come over, clearly they're going through something. Does that mean that you need to open the door still? Like, no. And you can say through the door, like, I told you I want to be alone. Like, please, I'm not opening the door. You can come back another time and I'll call you or I'll text you and I'll let you know when it's better for me. And you don't open the door. As painful as that is, or as dramatic as it may seem, like you've got to do that. If you really don't want this person visiting you at your house at that time, like don't open the door. And she stayed until you opened for another thing. Like, again, clearly there's something not right there. And I would say just don't open the door to that person and let her know in the future, like, please do not come over unannounced. I will not open the door. Eventually they'll get the message if you don't open the door. I guess by you finally opening it, she's like, oh, I can sit around and wait until I finally get you to like open the door. You got to show like, I mean it. I don't want visitors now. I need my alone time. Like I'm not opening the door,
Right. So the answer usually is I need to, oh, ouch.
Right.
So this person obviously has a lot more going on for them. There was actually a really good book that you had suggested on a different live. Was I Don't Need Help something? I'm not crazy. I don't need help. Was that what it was? It's such a good book. And in some of that dialogue, he does have some lines in there that can be used sometimes with people who really will see you as the villain and will not be able to see how they are in any way intrusive. The book could be helpful maybe in this case. It was a great book. Thank you for recommending that one. There was another question that was just sent now about blended families and sometimes how that shifts in terms of like, let's say couples who were used to helping their single parent, but then the parent gets married and the balance shifts. So first of all, she says, does it make sense that I feel a loss now because I'm not needed?
Yes, 100%. That is a totally normal, valid feeling. It's grief. It feels like a loss. And you feel a little bit like you're like cut out. And if this has been your identity for so long to be that helper and that support, now you're kind of like, shoot, what's my role? And you need to find a new role. So feeling that way is 100% valid and understandable. And something definitely to like work through and understand that it's okay to feel that way. It's such a healthy thing to feel, because that's been your identity, and now you have to shift that identity and find, fit yourself into the picture in a new way. And that's hard.
And I think just one piece leading sort of to what you said before is that's part of the reason that it's so good to set boundaries in the beginning as much as we can, so that this isn't the only role you have now in your life. You have other things going on. And if this moves out, it will be a grief, but not as intense as when this is the only thing you've been like sucked into. And this has been, like you're saying, kind of taken up your whole identity. How do you get rid of guilty feelings when you set boundaries? Someone's asking. Great question.
Yeah. So guilt is something that definitely comes with setting boundaries if you've never done it before, or if maybe underneath it all, you kind of feel like it's the wrong thing to do, or it's like not respectful, or it's like, like halachically wrong. But I would say that you should really just keep reminding yourself that like boundaries are not a bad thing. Like I'm doing this because I love and care about this person, and because I love and care about our relationship, and because I love and care about myself. I'm a better person when I have boundaries in place and when I when I set standards for myself of how I want to show up in a relationship and how I want to be treated in a relationship, I'm a better person for it. So it's kind of like boundaries are like the oxygen mask, you know? You can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. So on the airplane, they tell you, secure your oxygen mask before you do anyone else's. You're no good to anybody if you're totally depleted and like not taking care of yourself. So boundaries are the way that we take care of ourselves and the way that we honor, you know, our needs and our self-care. So kind of keeping that perspective of boundaries are not something that's bad. Boundaries are something that's going to help this relationship ultimately and keep us connected. That helps. And, you know, it might be hurtful at first, but ultimately, you know, it's for the good. It's kind of like, I always say, like, think about it also like how you deal with kids sometimes. Like, let's say you're walking through the aisles and they see a candy and they want it and you say, it's not kosher. And then they start crying and they're devastated and they're so upset. Of course, we feel bad that they're upset, but we know it's the right thing. So we're like, it's not kosher. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, like, I'm sorry you're upset. And like, you know, I hope you could find something similar that's kosher and great, but like, we're not feeling bad about our decision. So I kind of say like, let's treat like not, you know, behavior that's like not good for us as like, this is not kosher for me. And this is something that hurts my soul. It's not good for me. And while it feels uncomfortable to say that and to kind of like let people know this is off limits and it's not something I'm going to allow, I know that it's ultimately for my own good and for the good of this relationship, you know? So we don't feel, you know, guilty when we tell our kids they can't have a non-kosher candy. Like, same thing, you know, this is just not something that we allow for ourselves. And it's really ultimately for our good. But guilt is also remembering guilt doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It's just a feeling, you know, keeping that in mind. Guilt doesn't mean that you have to change your mind or that you are doing something bad. It's just you're doing something new that you're not used to, you know?
It's very true. And I think that last piece about guilt just being a feeling, I think sometimes we project that guilt, if I'm feeling guilty, then I must be doing something wrong. And sometimes that is true, right? But sometimes it's just a matter of a feeling of like, I'm ambivalent about what's going on. One last question, I think somebody just sent in, she says, what happens if the boundary you're setting is with an organization that has otherwise helped you? Okay, this is a biggie, and I hear this a lot, and I'm going to put it out there because I know some of my friends in the organizational world are going to watch this live later, and I just want to say from that perspective, and then you do the clinical piece. From my perspective, I will say that an organization that cannot respect that you'll take a piece of the package, but not the whole package, you have to question the motives that are going on there. I can tell you how many times that I get people who will tell me point blank, I'll take the publications, we're not coming to any events. Okay, that's great. If that's what works for you and that's helpful to you, wonderful. We have programs that never require anybody to ever see any of the staff. And we have programs that, you know, people always say to me, how do you have like 900 people on the mailing list and like 200 at an event? I said, right, because there's an awful lot of people who either don't live in this neighborhood, but also who will need a boundary of whatever it is that works for them. And I think that is true in the organizational world. And, you know, certainly we all have to be cognizant of this, but if a family is made to feel that, look, if you're getting any services from us, you need to take all services, you need to show up to all, you know, whatever events we do and stuff like that. That is a little bit of a scary place. And I think that it should be, most organizations do have some sort of clinical supervision, any of these kind of things. You may need to bring it up to somebody in the clinical pieces that this is uncomfortable for you, and hopefully they can tweak that. That's just my perspective from the nonprofit end of it. But I don't know, you know, if you have any other.
Yeah. I mean, I would say basically the same. Yeah. And for them to have expectations of anyone who's helping is really just not appropriate. And I feel like there are enough people in the world that, and again, I would say even for you to go back and even look at, why do I feel like I should be like bullied or guilty, you know, into being a part of, you know, doing something that I can't do right now or that I don't want to do. You have to start getting honest with yourself. Do I feel like I'm wrong for not helping because they did so much for me? They could have done a lot for you, and that's the purpose of their organization. Does that mean that now you are a slave to them for the rest of your life? Not at all. There are other ways that you could give back that don't involve you showing up to every event or doing all their fundraising, or, you know, it could be something as simple as you mail a check one year, or, you know, you help publicize an event, or once a year you dedicate to setting up an event for them or whatever it is. There's so many different ways that you can help that you don't have to feel that you are like tied to them for life and that you can never say no. And I think that's something that's very important in a relationship. And again, this goes back to the boundaries. You have to be able to feel safe to say no. And if you don't, that's something to look at. You know, we're supposed to feel safe to say, this doesn't work for me. It's not a good time for me right now. I would love to help in the future, but, you know, right now it's a little crazy for me, or I'm just overwhelmed, or it just doesn't work. And to know that there's not going to be any kind of like revenge or spite, or, you know, if they say, you know what, totally respect that. We understand that. And we're so grateful for everything you've done until now. So I think an organization that wouldn't do that, I would kind of wonder, like, what's going on there? You know, who's behind this organization? And if the person you're dealing with, maybe they're not representative of what the organization stands for. So then I would want to speak to someone higher up and say, like, this is the vibe that I'm getting, you know, and like, I know that's not what you guys are about. What's up? And then maybe have someone who's higher up reassure you, no, we totally get it. And, you know, we don't have these expectations and we're so happy with what you can do. But again, use your voice and don't just take for granted that, like, oh, you know, they helped me so much. Like, I have to give them everything, my life, 24 hours, 365 days a year, you know?
Right. So somebody just wrote, is it expectations, or is the question instead, you've helped me so much, but now how do I say I don't need so much, you know, help? They might feel ungrateful, though it's probably healthy. They might feel like you're ungrateful. Yeah, I think that may have been a little bit along the lines of what you're saying, is that, you know, say along the lines of the men who say, I need to change the locks on the door, I don't want any more kugels being brought in on a Thursday, right? It's the same way sometimes a person may need to say, good, this was in crisis, this worked for us. Right now, we're not in this kind of crisis and we need something less. And again, I think back to what you said, that if an organization can't understand and support the fact that even if they don't agree, right? Even if they may be seeing a house that looks to them in somewhat chaos, but unless there's any danger involved, they have to respect the fact that this is right now the place that you want to be, or that this family wants to be. And I think they need to respect that. And like you said, if it's not working with the person there, we need to climb the ladder.
Yeah.
And one last thing, actually, I thought we were going to close, but somebody just wrote something very important, and I thought it would be nice. She said, can you give ideas maybe of all kinds of boundaried help? I guess like more along the lines of what you were saying, like the alternating Shabbosim and stuff like that, because she's indicating to that piece that you mentioned. So maybe if there are other ideas of how people can be helpful that kind of still has some sort of boundaried element to it, like that has a firm beginning, middle, and end.
So something that I think is super important is like something that I see come up a lot, more with families that have like, just because this is mostly what I deal with, but families who have maybe family members with mental illness, but this could go for someone who's dealing with a loss. Like sometimes they'll come in and like do their laundry for them and cook their meals for them and like, you know, just constantly like be taking over and being like babysitters. So I always say, like, instead of doing that, why not teach them how to cook their own meals? Why not show them how to do their laundry and set a schedule with them, you know? So if your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law or whatever is overwhelmed because now like they have to do all the laundry for all the kids and they're so overwhelmed and why don't you say like, it's going to be tough now. Yeah, I get it. You know, Chavi always did laundry or Shmuley always did the laundry and took care of grocery shopping, whatever. Let's set up a schedule. Let me show you how to order groceries online. Let me show you're giving them the tools. Let's set up a laundry schedule. Sunday, you do the kids. Saturday night, you know, Motzei Shabbos, you stay in anyway, you do your laundry. You give them like the skills to be able to do it on their own so that they're not dependent on you. And it's a gift. You're giving them skills to like learn how to live. And then you don't have to feel bad that you're not doing their laundry or cooking for them. So again, teaching them how to cook, or, you know, these are great places to order out from. You know what, you guys, my sister always cooked for you guys. Thursday night, start doing pizza night. It'll make your lives easier and it's fun. You know, giving them like ideas of how to kind of like be more independent and not depend on you so much. I think that's really important. So teaching them to cook, giving them a menu so that they don't have to think of dinner ideas. Come up with it. What do the kids love to eat? Let's write a menu down so that you know what to cook or what to make or whatever it is. And Or even asking friends or neighbors, like, guys, you know, my brother-in-law or my sister-in-law feels overwhelmed. Like, can you guys pitch in? Reaching out to other people to help them too, so that it doesn't just fall on you. If you know they have friends that want to help, ask those friends, give them the opportunity to help also. You know, so you can say, you know, once a month, you know, your friend Sharon down the block offered to do XYZ. Awesome. Put that in the calendar. So you're setting them up to have like kind of a routine that doesn't depend on you, you know, and then you put it in their hands to like figure out how to navigate from there. So you set them up, but you're like, it's like a scaffolding, you know, you slowly pull away and like, then they stand on their own. You're not like, oh, good luck with that, you know, but you're also not holding them up the whole time. You're giving a foundation and making sure everything's in its place. And then you slowly like remove yourself a little bit. You still stick around, but you're not holding them up anymore. You don't want to be doing that. That's not helping them. That's hurting them. That's enabling. And that's not giving them any kind of, you know, comfort or skill or any ability to live their life, you know?
I think that's such a beautiful idea. It's like, you know, the Gemara of teach a man to fish, right? It's instead of just constantly giving a person a handout, giving them the skill that they need in order for them to build whatever it is, you know, whether it's career-wise or homemaking-wise or otherwise. I think, you know, just I would add one caveat about the neighbor piece is that sometimes you don't know what went on with that sister-in-law, and that neighbor might be someone that like goes and blasts this on social media. Here I am packing up with foil for the ex-family down the street. So I would say probably before we approach a person, I would probably say to ask the family, just to clear that it's good to ask Sharon. And they'd be like, oh, Sharon, not Sharon, right? Okay, so
you who are your good friends that you would want me to reach out to that can be helpful, that would not annoy you, that the kids love to be with. That's really important. Know who they want around. Don't just assume, you know, someone who's like, oh, I love your sister-in-law, and then your sister-in-law's like, I can't stand that girl, you know? Make sure that the feelings are mutual. So say, you know, oh, you know, whatever, Sarah reached out to me, like, are you cool with her, like, helping out, you know? Make sure that's what they want, because there are some people that are like, I don't want her help, or I don't want them around, like, and we have to honor.
Sometimes they may know that boundaries either won't be respected, it comes with too many strings attached. You know, there's a lot of stuff that sometimes we're not privy to. But I think, you know, the ability to offer them the help within that. And another idea that actually somebody just messaged was the idea of also offering something for a limited time. Can, like she said, after her mother-in-law passed away, somebody cooked for her father-in-law for the first month, stocked the freezer for a month, and said, like, basically, until you get back on your feet, I'm giving you a month's worth of meals there. But it was very clear that it's over after a month. So it kind of gives the person a couple weeks to get their bearings together, but, you know, and systems in place. This was so helpful. I certainly hope that we answered as many of the questions as possible. But I think, you know, I think that the takeaway for me is so much about the fact that boundaries are so loving. They're so kind. And really, I if we did nothing else other than, you know, tell that to people, but I think the idea of doing it from the get-go in the beginning is brilliant also. And I certainly hope that people can implement this and find it helpful, and that more kids and teens, in a certain sense, and more families will get the help they need, because people will feel comfortable saying, oh, I could do this for X amount of time, or I can do this in this way. So hopefully we generate more kindness that way.
Yeah. And I think something that's important to keep in mind is for the kids, or, you know, for whoever's in need, is like, ask for help if you need it. Don't expect people to be mind readers, but also understand, like, sometimes the answer will be no. And that doesn't mean they don't love you and they don't care. It just means that right now they can't do what you need. That doesn't mean that there's no one else that will be willing to do it. And it doesn't mean that this person doesn't want to, you know, so sometimes people say no, and it's not because they don't want to or they don't care. It's just they really can't. And sometimes we tell ourselves a story, they don't love me, they don't care about me, they're mad at me, they you know, like, don't listen to those stories. If someone says no, it's not, no, I don't want to, it's no, I can't right now, you know, and kind of keep that perspective of like, people don't want to hurt, they do want to help for the most part. You know, your family cares about you and they want to be there for you, but the answer is not always going to be yes. And, you know, they have to just keep that in mind. I think that's really important.
Yes. So I really appreciate you coming on here. It was a
No
treat.
problem.
I think we've been wanting to do something for a while, so this was a real treat.
Yes.
Thank you again. And really, we'll keep the conversation around these boundaries going, and we'll see what other questions come up. But this live was an amazing, amazing start.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Yeah.
to everyone. I think we're running out of time now, so we'll
Okay.
go up. Okay, take care. Good night.